With all the preparations complete, Paul and his wife Rianne have sold their house to move into a caravan on site. Work now begins to restore the hull, to replace the entire deck, to rebuild the wheelhouse, and with a lick of paint, this should breathe a new lease of life back into the old girl. Made from Colombian mahogany, the hull was designed to lessen the dangers the vessel would face. Initially to aid buoyancy, it would also allow the enemy's shells and bullets to pass straight through, reducing the risk to both crew and vessel. And being lighter, it would attain faster speeds.
Well, first of all, we shot blasted the boat, which took a weekend. Then we dressed it in epoxy resin. Once that had gone off, then we caulked the joints. We're using 1/3 hardener, so the resin didn't quite go off. Then we sanded it all down, and we left it for the winter to swell up. The reason we mixed the resin up with 1/3 hardener is that the resin will actually never really go off and stays pliable. And once the skins start expanding and the joints expand and close up, then it pushes this resin back out, which then we scrape off, leaving a hard seal all the way round so that the wood's not damaged on the edges when it touches.
Not fall off the bolt.
It's me, playing away as usual. Just another toy and another day. The Admiralty were after some high performance boats just after the war, and these boats coming from the war, they were designed to be fast and plane on top of the water rather than go through the water. They had this wonderful bow which Vosper's, it was their namesake really. They knew how to make them. They're all made of double diagonal mahogany to keep them light. And if you look at the curve of the boat, as the hull curves round, this is to cut through the water, and as the speed increased, so the bow came up out of the water, and the boat then sat on the back of the transom, gave incredible speeds, and the design being of an aircraft structure enabled the boat to be light as well. When the boats were in service, the maximum speed was around 40 knots, and at 40 knots you'd probably get this much of the boat would be clean out of the water, so you'd be able to see daylight underneath, and that's a phenomenal feat when you consider that the boat's 75 foot, but their working load would have been 55 tons, so that would be their gross weight total, and nearly 4,000 horsepower of engine to push this lot forward at 40 knots.
I was doing a little survey of the deck, having a little wander around, and I put my foot straight through the front quarter deck. Most of it was spongy and had succumbed to a lot of rainwater and freshwater ingression. So it was decided to bite the bullet and had to take the whole deck off.
Champions Arsenal could secure a place in the record book when they take on Leicester City this afternoon. If they avoid defeat, the team will be the first.
As you can see by looking at it, not only was the deck roved onto the structure below the deck, but also the various amounts of screws, bolts and nuts that held on all the sub-assemblies that were scattered around the deck, the fixings, etc. all had to be removed. Everything had to be cleaned up, and in certain places had to be repaired and scarfed new bits of wood in prior to laying down a new deck. We laid the deck using marine ply, and this was screwed down rather than roved. All the deck fixings and all the bolts, nuts and screws that had to come out were laboriously taken out, and the surfaces were all cleaned, prepped, new material was scarfed in, and then the new deck was laid down using epoxy resin and screws. Once this had been done, then we gave it a coat of epoxy resin all over and put down a medium rove, and screeded more epoxy resin on top until we ended up with a deck that had a sheathing all over the top of it, which joined all the borders as well and the gunnels, this giving us a watertight deck again, and a very strong one at that. After that, We used a 2-pack epoxy primer, and we put grit, which we used for shot blasting on the deck, and used that as an anti-slip agent. Then a polyurethane top coat, and we came out with a brand new deck.
The workload is tremendous, and a jack of all trades required, because you have to know or have to learn everything you do. So putting a whole new deck on the boat, making the torpedo tubes, painting the side of the boat, cleaning the sides of the boat, re-riveting, screwing, nailing, general carpentry work, metal work, everything has to go, and you have to do it all, otherwise it will just cost too much money.
Like most MTBs, the Archer had an open wheelhouse. This provided an increased awareness of their surroundings, especially for night operations.
We had to remove the original structure that was put in 1965-66. We found the drawings from Vosper's, who donated them to us, and we rebuilt a new wheelhouse using those drawings. Admittedly, we made it a little bit stronger and a little bit thicker than the original design, but that's so that it will last a lot longer now it's been put in. Again, afterwards, that was epoxy resined and sheathed as well to give it some added protection. Most of the components that are on the bridge are actually original to the boat, and we have put them back as near as we can to the original positions, albeit we cannot enter the boat via the original way of a drop ladder straight down into the saloon. We had to put a staircase in, so the petty officer's seat had to be removed and brought forward, and thus some of the components in the boat had to be shifted accordingly to make way for the new entrance.
The steering is done by a rack and pinion set, and it's not hydraulic at all, it's manually operated. So you drive it like a tank. So if you want to turn the boat one way or the other, you stop one engine and go forward and then go back on the other one. The boat was powered by 3 propellers, or screws as they're called in nautical terms. We have the centre shafts taken out because we're going to run on 2 propellers, but originally we would have had 3, and 3 Packard engines that would have powered them. 3 rudders, we're using all 3 rudders, but that's purely for when the rudders only have authority once the engines are running and you've got a good head of speed up. It's purely again because it's a big flat bottom boat, and the rudders themselves are only designed purely for high performance running. So when the boat's actually canted at an angle, you can imagine the propellers are pushing an awful lot of water past them, and the rudders then become effective to be able to manoeuvre the boat at high speeds. What we've decided to do, this part of the boat would have been the officer's mess. The stairs would have led directly down from the bridge into this area. In this side we've made it into a bedroom, but this would have been where the radar equipment would have been housed. This is where the petty officer would have slept. Leading into the front of the boat through the original door, which all works. It's a sealed bulkhead door to prevent the boat from flooding in the event the hull getting damaged. We have the front room. Forward is stores and a walkway to the top of the boat as an exit. Behind you is the toilet, or the heads as they call it. This is an original piece and comes equipped with its original sink for washing your hands with. As far as our helpers go, here we have Rianne's mother and father, and they're busy doing the electrics in the boat and wiring up all the lights ready for me to install the engines. Doing a good job. I gauged the project to last for 2 years. That's the total restoration of the hull and superstructure, and we're actually on target at the moment. I think probably maybe another 2 months would see the project through. So by June the 1st of this year, that would be 2 years since we started the restoration on this boat.
We took a section of paint from the boat and I sent it off to International, who actually did the original paint for these vessels. And the light blue, it was a more greyer blue when it was in service, but obviously that makes it look a bit drab. And I wanted to give it like a new lease of life, so I chose a colour which was just a shade above in blue and used that, and that's a covert colour that they used for covert operations in the Baltic, especially as the vessel did a lot of her work out of Aarhus Harbour in Denmark and worked in the Baltic. It was more of a visual stealth, being out at sea in a Force 4 or a Force 3 with white horses running around, as they call them. You tend to lose the vessel over 1,000 yards because the green is roughly the same colour as the sea at that distance, and the sky is the same colour as the side of the boat, and all the fixings, deck fixings, mast and that are white, so that gives you the illusion of the white horses, so it can blend in with the background.
We would go out to sea at night usually and try out this new electronic equipment, or whatever type of new equipment it was, and that was basically what I was doing. And I consider myself very fortunate because at any given time I think there were only 2 national servicemen in the whole of the Navy who had their own command, and I was lucky to be one of them.
After being landlocked for 27 years, Paul looks to launch the Archer. All going well, the engines and armaments can be fitted.